Hello Netghosts, Phantom here, and today is our first deep dive on the Cyberpunk Edgerunners Mission Kit, talking about Quickhacking and Neuroports. If you're not already familiar with the CEMK, it serves as both a new jumpstart kit for brand new players looking to get into cyberpunk tabletop role-playing in the era of the 2070s, specifically the year 2076, the year in which the anime takes place, but it also serves as an expansion to the Cyberpunk Red core rules, which allows you, if you have the Cyberpunk Red core rulebook, to essentially play a full campaign in the 2070s. It achieves this by introducing new gear, making some tweaks to the Cyberpunk Red role abilities and economy, and in some other ways too that we'll be exploring in this deep dive series. Without further ado, let's begin with today's subject, and let's start with the foundational change that makes all of this possible. Gen 3 Cyberware, and specifically Neuroports. Gen 3 Cyberware is a third generation of Cyberware. We can kind of view Cyberware in the 2040s as Gen 2 and the Cyberware of 2020s as Gen 1. Not every generation is objectively better than the other, just as we know that technological developments in our current real world aren't linear either. The main thing is just that they're different. Quite a bit different as we see these kind of new epochs in cyberware technology. This third generation was brought on by Jacinda Hidalgo, who's the CEO of Rockland Augmentics. She had this vision for unifying the human body, in fact, kind of splitting the human body into multiple bodies unified by a single consciousness. This emerged in the design of what came to be known as a neuroport. We can view the Neuroport as a central cybernetic control system, or really just a operating system that allows all of your different cybernetic components to talk to each other. The main advantage of a Neuroport is that it is very effective at what it was designed to do. Having that central operating system means that new firmware updates can be rolled out to accommodate new cyberware as it releases, while of course also promoting communication between your different cyberware components and making them overall more efficient and therefore more advanced. Also made maintenance on cyberware easier, which theoretically or ostensibly would make cyberware in general more accessible. It also allows for cheaper miniaturized technologies, since now these individual cyberware components don't need to be independently powered. They can draw from a small battery that is included within the Neuroport itself. When you're playing a character in the 2070s, your character most likely already has a Neuroport installed. Most people in the 2070s had these installed to them as a kid before they could even really consent to it. Dark future. The good news about this is that when you're creating a 2070s character, you actually can now save some significant eddies. You don't have to pay for a Neuralink, and you also don't have to pay for interface plugs. All of that is built right into your character. The Neuroport really is kind of an all-in-one personal enhancement tool, and it does quite a lot. So let's break down some of what the Neuroport does. First, the Neuroport is going to connect to both your optic nerve as well as your auditory processing centers of the brain. So this allows it to transmit information to your eyes and your ears real time. Neuroports also come with a built-in holophone. This is going to replace the agents that we used in the time of the Red, and holophones are pretty interesting. We learn in the book that you can actually learn to communicate with your holophone with just your brain, allowing you to not have to speak at all, communicating with just your thoughts. Obviously, the thoughts in your head usually aren't as organized as they are when they come out of your mouth. So communication just off of the gray comes across as a little bit more clumsy.
You will observe.
Good rat off the street. Me? Nah, wouldn't show my face.
Crazy, I know, but some of us are here to learn.
With that fossil tech? Updates, man. Bet it's not compatible.
Made it compatible.
You're also going to be using your holophone to search the CityNet, so when you're using those library search rules at the table, you don't have to pull out your agent, you're just going to do it straight from the dome. You can also take photos, and you can schedule things to your calendar. You can also text message using just your brain. Now, here's another really interesting feature. All of those pieces of our customizable HUD that we see in the video game all come to life here. So most people are going to have a database in their holophone that will identify certain notable people and things in their environment just via their holophone. And also, your holophone can generate subtitles and translate speech live. Kind of an interesting implication for your characters who really invested in becoming a polyglot by putting points into different languages, now with a holophone, most people can just translate other people's speech without needing to learn a language at all. Now your Neuroport is also going to come included with a biomonitor. This means a couple of things. It means that you're going to be able to track your own vitals and your heart rate. This also means that Trauma Team will be notified if your biomonitor is giving off readings indicating an emergency. Some enemy corporate goons might actually have their biomonitors linked up to the security system of an infrastructure. If a goon goes down and their biomonitor flatlines, it might just set off corporate security alarms. Our Neuroports also come with something called a personal link. This is that link installed in Vizris that we see in the video game, and our player characters are pretty much all going to have this. Characters are able to interface with computer systems. Sometimes they can do this just with the Neuroport alone wirelessly. Sometimes you are going to have to jack in. Of course, there's a lot of big money in these Neuroports. Even though there are a lot of doomsayers that are trying to warn people off of installing Neuroports, the NCPD and corporations continue to insist that quick hack attacks are down every year. We also get the inclusion of those 2 shards. They call them plugin shards. We obviously see these in the video game and anime. Each of these slots serves a different purpose. One of these is enhancement shard. So this is where a skill chip can go, for example, from Cyberpunk Red. And the other one of these is a data shard. So this can present a presentation or play a video. This does not, of course, allow you to experience a full brain dance. For that, you are still going to need a brain dance wreath. Cyberware that's going to interface directly with your Neuroport is going to include fashion wear, cyber optics, cyber audio, cyber limbs, internal and external cyberware such as internal or external linear frames, and Borgware, and even full body conversions or FBCs. All of these are going to be linked directly to that central operating system that is your Neuroport. Regarding old Gen 2 Chrome, things such as slicers, wolvers, rippers, slice and dice, all that Gen 2 Chrome has now been updated by corporations to interface with Neuroports as their foundational cyberware. So those have not gone away. All right, now this is the part that you came for. Let's start talking about the new net actions that are available to netrunners with a Neuroport. Primarily, of course, quick hacking. So now a netrunner can jack in to the Neuroport of an enemy target as long as they are within 25 squares of them, or 50 meters. Just like with jacking into access points in the time of the Red, this does need to be a visible target. You have to have line of sight to be able to jack in. In order to jack in, the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to roll your interface rank plus 1d10 versus the opponent's will plus 1d10. A netrunner is going to successfully jack in regardless of this check success or failure, but the purpose of it is to determine whether or not the enemy is aware that they've been jacked into. It's also important to note that if the enemy is a netrunner, they can automatically detect that someone has jacked into their Neuroport without making this check at all. So it can be completely skipped if the person being jacked into is a netrunner. On their turn, if an enemy is aware that they've been hacked, they can try to force out the netrunner by rolling 1d10 plus their concentration, versus the netrunner once again rolling 1d10 plus their interface. If a netrunner is forced out this way, this does count as an unsafe jack out. If you are forced out, a netrunner is not able to try to jack into that same target for a full 60 minutes. Important to note here is that netrunners can jack into multiple Neuroports at once as long as those Neuroports remain within their range and they still have net actions that they can spend on jacking into new Neuroports. When you are trying to either upload quick hacks or even upload a virus to someone's Neuroport, ostensibly this could allow you to wipe their holophone, to extract data from their holophone, to corrupt its usage in some way. You're actually going to need to run through a net architecture, which can have 2 types of defenses on it. Self-Ice is a new piece of cyberware that serves as an upgrade to the Neuroport. You can install up to 3 of these in your Neuroport, each of them costing 500 eddies, and each of them acting as a new pass wall that the enemy netrunner is going to need to get past. In Cyberpunk Red, breaching a password was called a backdoor. Now it is called a breach. Each of these pass walls that somebody has in the Neuroport because of a self-ice, it not only acts as an additional pass wall, it also increases the difficulty value of the net action a netrunner is going to have to use to breach that pass wall. You don't have to be a netrunner to install self-ice onto your Neuroport. Anybody can do this, and it does seem like a pretty reasonable upgrade if you're just looking to secure your Neuroport and thereby prevent not only yourself from being quick hacked, but somebody being able to hack into your holophone and upload a virus. Another way to defend your Neuroport is actually by using black ice. If you install an internal Cyberdeck, which is now the new standard in Gen 3 Cyberware, and hook it up to your Neuroport, when someone attempts to hack your Neuroport, you can move those black ice into the net architecture that the enemy netrunner is going to have to run through in order to hack your Neuroport. I'm going to throw up on the screen one of the example net architectures that we get in the CMK. This should give you a good idea of what a netrunner is going to have to contest with if they want to upload quick hacks or be able to upload a virus to the holophone of an enemy who has a Cyberdeck installed. Importantly here, in order to be able to upload quick hacks or upload viruses to the holophone, you don't actually need to destroy all of the black ice here. The main thing that you need to do is at least breach all of the pass walls that are in this net architecture. The net arch protecting someone's Neuroport is essentially created in the instant that someone attempts to hack their Neuroport. It is the person being hacked that gets to determine exactly what this net architecture looks like. This opens up some interesting strategy. If you want to place the majority of your pass walls up front, that just means that the enemy netrunner is going to get stalled as long as possible, and then to be able to use slide, one of their net actions, to just get past all of the black ice and begin uploading quick hacks. If your goal is instead to soften up a netrunner who's trying to hack your Neuroport, a good way to do that would actually probably be to throw your black ice at the top of the net architecture. That way the enemy netrunner has to contend with them and hopefully ends up taking some damage or otherwise just be harmed or waylaid by the many other things that black ice can do to defend a net architecture. For those extra paranoid chooms running in the 2070s dark future, it might not be a bad idea if you have the eddies to invest in an internal Cyberdeck and a couple of black ice just to beef up the security of your Neuroport, make you harder to quick hack, and make it harder for someone to upload some viruses in your holophone. With that all out of the way, let's finally get into the quick hacks themselves. Here's the list of all the quick hacks right here. We're not going to talk about each of these, but we are going to touch on just a few of them to give you an idea of just how powerful quick hacks can be. Let's start by touching on impair movement, one of the simple quick hacks that can be achieved with just a 7 or better on an interface check. For a starting netrunner with an interface rank of 4, that means they'll need to roll a 3 or better. And one of the quick hacks they can upload is impair movement. Now, impair movement is pretty straightforward. It does what it says. It's going to reduce your enemy's move score by a set and small value. There is actually a difficult version of this quick hack that's even more powerful that allows you to roll a die to determine how much it affects the enemy's move score. But I see this being used quite a bit in chases, whether the players are chasing down an enemy NPC or if the PCs are being chased and one of the enemies is a netrunner. The PCs might think that they're getting away when all of a sudden, their joints are a little bit more stiff than they remembered them being a moment ago. Moving on to the standard quick hacks, we do see the appearance of short circuit here, which is going to directly affect the target's cyberware. Again, there is an upgraded version of this quick hack at DV10 that is going to be even more powerful, be able to target additional cyberware, and also be able to target foundational cyberware. So while short circuit can only shut down attachments to cyberware, such as the mantis blades attached to somebody's cyber arm, the cyberware malfunction at DV10 will actually be able to shut down the entire cyber limb, for example. So it'll shut down the cyber arm and all of its attachments. Sticking with difficult quick hacks here at a DV10, we also see the inclusion of one of our covert quick hacks that makes an appearance in the video game. We have Lure, which is going to do essentially what it sounds like it would do. It's going to allow the netrunner to control the target's movement for the duration of their turn. I'll leave the rest of it for the full rules, but we can start imagining some of the clever things that we could do with this. Finally, the advanced quick hacks at a DV12 are extremely powerful. Now keep in mind, these are going to be really hard to pull off. A netrunner, even with an interface of 7, is going to need to beat a DV of 12, which is going to mean that they're going to need to roll a 6 or higher. So advanced quick hacks are primarily going to be saved for all or nothing rules in which your netrunner's blowing all of their luck, or those late game netrunners who are just some of the best in the world at what they do. One of the inclusions here is Puppet. If we want to think of Puppet as an extremely powerful lure, it's not covert, but it does allow you to essentially control the enemy's entire turn. Speaking of getting creative, obviously there's quite a lot that you can do here. You want him to zero his choom, you want him to pull the pin on his own grenade, you want him to jump off a 12-story building. These are the kinds of things you're going to be able to do with Puppet. For the breakdown on all the quick hacks, you're just going to have to pick up a copy of the CEMK yourself, but you're starting to get an idea, I'm sure, of just how powerful and potent these quick hacks can be, and just how much of a dynamic they're going to add to your table with both the PC netrunners and the enemy netrunners. The final inclusion that we'll touch on in this video is direct connection netrunning, which actually allows you to use your personal link to directly jack into someone's neuroport. The effect of this is going to be that you get an additional net action on each one of your turns if you are connected to their neuroport using their personal link. This has to either be a willing target or someone who's been entirely incapacitated and has no recourse against you jacking into them directly. I can see this incentivizing some creativity from the players to attempt to subdue certain targets before they do a direct connection net run into their neuroport, to just absolutely hammer them with quick hacks or install some incredibly malicious viruses into their holophones. As a final mention, it's important to note here that the old Cyberdecks from Cyberpunk Red are now fully included in these rules. There are a lot of interesting implications here when you're looking at your Netrunner builds, but one that has to be mentioned is the Karama Advanced deck that was included in the Midnight with the Upload DLC for Cyberpunk Red. This is an advanced 500 eddy deck that, while it's limited to 5 slots, does make any unsafe jackout a safe jackout. This means that if you are unsafely jacked out from someone's neuroport because they force you out using their concentration check as an action, you actually are no longer hindered by that limitation, which says that you need to wait an hour before trying to quick hack them again. On your very next turn, you can just dive right back in. I'm really excited to see what netrunners do in the community with these new rules in the 2070s, and also what netrunners start to do at my own table. This has been the first in our deep dive series. We're gonna have another video in this series soon talking about the new chrome and the new gear included here. I'd also like to continue to touch on some more of the lore additions that we got here in the CEMK that I think are really rich and exciting for world building and fertile ground for GMs to be inspired for running games in the 2070s. That's gonna wrap up our deep dive on quick hacking and neuroports in the CEMK. Hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure that you do the thing. And until next time, stay safe on those mean streets of Night City. Phantom signing off.